Westbrook on LeBron. LeBron ate it up at the rim. Wow, he got some bounce in those 35-year-old legs.
Whose game is it? It's Michael Jordan's game.
Have it. 6 to play. Booker. This is for the win. Got it.
Basis. So Kobe will dunk, and then so will the other two. Then they'll do it one more time.
Oh, between the legs. Got to get it in. Here's Luka. Gets it away. It's gone. A Johnson.
And the brilliance of the young man from Athens. This is the end of an unbelievable era.
Well, first, thanks very much.
Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Christine Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donan, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch. Double Clutch.
Double Clutch Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Double Clutch Podcast. 2 weeks after the last show, unfortunately, but these things happen. Let's dive straight in with Around the Association. Now, a little bit of a sad one today, actually. Today marks the exact 2-year anniversary of Kobe Bryant passing away. There's been a number of tributes paid to him, and I wanted to take this opportunity to read what I wrote on the Double Clutch website the following day, 2 years ago tomorrow. So here goes. The death of Kobe Bryant is one of those tumultuous events that people will always remember where they were when they heard the news. I started that previous sentence with the idea that I'd be writing specifically that basketball fans will remember where they were. But I quickly realised that that would be doing a disservice to the legacy that Bryant has left in the popular imagination. All kinds of people, regardless of their basketball affiliation, will remember where they were when they heard the news. It's tough to put into words the emotions that come with anyone passing, but it seems doubly so for someone the stature of Kobe. It can feel self-indulgent to focus on your own feelings when there are family members and loved ones who will be missing their father, their friend, their husband. Kobe Bryant was one of the fiercest competitors to ever step onto a basketball court and one of basketball's all-time greatest performers. But it was also more than this. To anyone who followed his career, to anyone who followed the NBA or international basketball during the 90s, the 2000s or the 2010s, hearing of the tragic news of Bryant's passing will feel like they've lost a part of themselves. A complex personality, an unbelievable talent, and a work ethic that became equal parts folklore and reality. The incredible dynamic about Kobe's stories was that whatever you heard about his workouts and his drive to win championships, however insane, you could never fully rule them out as not being true. That's the kind of drive he possessed, and that's how he was able to become more than just a player. Kobe Bryant could take on whatever meaning you wanted to place on him. Bryant was basketball's white whale for two different generations of basketball fans. Like Moby Dick, Bryant's symbolism was enigmatic, a provocative challenge to the reader, perhaps even a mirror back at them. However you chose to read Bryant, however, was how you chose to publicly speak about him and align yourself in regards to Kobe. That said something about you as a basketball fan and as a person. Basketball is a passion for some, an escape for others. Whatever you wanted to take from the sport, Kobe could be the hero, he could be the villain, but you were never leaving with whatever you wanted for your own life. Kobe's passing will feel very personal to a lot of people for these very reasons. Perhaps we should best remember him as we would have wanted for himself. A winner, a father, a husband, a creative force, and a man who touched the lives of people all around the world. Thank you, Kobe. And if I can switch gears a little bit, bring up the tone to be a little bit more happy. I'm going to do my normal thing where I laugh a little bit at UK news and relate it to the NBA. So in the news this week, astronomers have discovered a mysterious pulsing object that may be a new class of star. Personally, I believe this is just Ja Morant, who continues to electrify the NBA. Of course, you haven't been able to avoid this in the news this week. Downing Street has been frozen by the endless debate of was it or wasn't it a party? I say invite the NBA's resident expert, James Harden, who can sniff out a party from a mile away. Sources have definitely not said that he is trying to force a trade with the Tory party, with Boris Johnson allegedly willing to part with Michael Gove, Matt Hancock's lover, Larry the Cat, and a second-round draft pick. Steve Nash has said he believes they would at least produce more than Paul Millsap has this season. And on with the show. So we're joined this week by Ben Bean. He's back.
It's going very well. Thank you for having me back.
And let's start with, I spent a lot of time talking about Kobe in that opening segment. Let's talk about, it's been 2 years. How have you felt over the last 2 years in relation to, does he ever pop up in your thoughts when you think about the NBA, or how have the past 2 years been?
For me, it's been weird. I think we're quite lucky as NBA fans that the majority of the big icons of the game are still with us. I think, you think about all sort of through all those 80s guys, the 70s guys, they're all mainly still with us. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar still with us, and Kobe's sort of the first. We're not the first. I know Wilt and others are sadly still not with us, but like Kobe went before his time. So the idea of you see certain scenarios where the iconic NBA players pop up, and it's still weird that he's not there to join them.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's also like compared to a lot of other sports that are. I'm just going to say older. That's a strange dynamic in basketball that, exactly as you say, so many of our greatest ever players are still with us and able to kind of give their thoughts on the current game. And Kobe in particular would have been one of the most interesting perspectives, I think, on how the game has changed, on styles of play, on specific players coming through. And that sort of thing. So I think we've lost a lot more than just one of the best players to ever play the game. One thing I'm curious about, just because you're a fair bit younger than I am, how did Kobe's career align with you getting interested in basketball? Like, I'm assuming he was towards the end of his career at the point you were getting.
Yeah, this is the sort of sad thing for me. When I first got into basketball, there was sort of a passing of the torch, and it was like sort of guys like Kobe, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, they were all starting to get to the back end of their career, so I never sadly got to see them as much in their prime. But even in the back end of his career, he was just an amazing force to watch. We were discussing this earlier. I sort of jotted down a few things I remember about Kobe. I sort of remember him being, even in his later years, just this fighter, wanting to keep going. Sort of that iconic moment against Golden State where he injures his Achilles and still tries to take the free throws. There's that iconic picture of sat on the bench during his later years, basically ice packs everywhere, but yet he's still going out there and battling. I remember him, of course, having a flair for the dramatic throughout his career, and I think for me that's, epitomising his final game, getting the 60 points. And some people, try to knock him, saying, he took loads of shots. He still had to make them. Ended his career on such a high. And then after that, sort of, for me, sort of seeing the third part of his sort of story, being a father, and sort of those nice moments he had with his daughter on the sideline, even some funny moments where he interacted with LeBron, sort of spoke Slovenian to Luka Doncic. Slovenia. And just sort of all those elements of Kobe, just sort of being that fighter, being that winner, being that sad, and also that father. It's just so sad he's still longer with us.
Yeah, I have a different perspective, which is why I was interested to hear yours. In that his rookie season was pretty much, I think, one of the first I was able to watch games consistently more than just highlights and stuff. So it really did feel like his career matched my own passion and interest in basketball almost perfectly. He was just the right amount older than me, that as I was kind of the ages of like 12 to 14, he was really like on a pinnacle in terms of, well, not initially actually, the more I think about it, when I remember watching those early seasons, and I was a big Shaq fan, so watching those seasons with the Lakers, and he seemed so arrogant, and I couldn't believe that a team would like put the ball in this teenager's hands and take shots away from Shaq. It seemed crazy at the time. But yeah, then following his career all the way through to like the later years where he's kind of fighting Father Time, and that kind of mirrored my own modest, obviously, playing career as to like how he was able to overcome that stuff. So yeah, I felt a lot of way sadder than I even thought I would when I heard the news of him passing. Obviously, I've never been a Lakers fan, but yeah, it symbolized so much to me, more than just a player, that yeah, I really felt that. Do you have any particular memories that are specific to Kobe that you always think about?
So like sort of those three that I've always gone over, sort of just always iconic things that pop into my head. Of course, there's all the highlights of sort of before my time that you got to think about, the 81-point game, winning the original three-peat, and all the sort of the game winners. But I do, for me, it is that final game, and I think it's because it epitomises in one how long he played. He was clearly tired, but then it's the fact, and some people did try to knock that final game, like, oh, he took so many shots to get the six. It's like he still had to make them. If you watch the last sort of 5 minutes of that game when he's running on fumes, he's hitting difficult shots against that was a Utah Jazz team that just missed out on the playoffs in a very competitive Western Conference. They were wanting to put up a fight because they knew it was Kobe's last game, sort of respect for him, wanted to battle hard, and he still, at the age he was, running on fumes, sort of took it to them and won that final game for his team.
One of another memory that I'll always kind of treasure is in 2019, in the job I was in at the time with FIBA Media. Kobe Bryant was the ambassador for the tournament. And so he was doing a lot of media, and he was at the tournament and stuff. So I was lucky enough to spend a little bit of time around him. And one of the things I'll never forget is there are 2 human beings that I've ever been in the same room with who have that kind of presence that almost before you even see them, you know they've entered the room. And it's him and Michael Jordan, who and that may just be skewed towards the way I think about basketball compared to anything else. But I've been around a lot of players. I've been lucky enough in professional capacity and that sort of thing. But yeah, Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan are the only 2 people who I've ever been in a room with, and they've had that real presence. And it's interesting you brought up how he was able to speak some Slovenian to Luka Doncic. And one of the things I did in that job was set up specific media to interview him. 2 of whom were from Spanish media, and Kobe had been learning Spanish for a little bit on account of family links and things like that. And obviously he grew up in Italy, so he's fluent in Italian. He did the Italian interview completely in Italian, obviously no problems at all. He then sat down with the Spanish journalists and he did the interviews entirely in Spanish, which blew me away. And I spoke to the journalist after the interview and I said, he just spoke entirely in Spanish. And they were like, yeah, we were surprised too. And I said, how good was his Spanish? And I'm trying to get exactly what they said here. They said basically like he wasn't perfect, but he was kind of relentless in trying to make them understand what he meant, which was really powerful in my mind, because it really spoke to, even after his playing days, how once he had a goal in mind or something, how single-minded he was in chasing that stuff. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff I'll never really forget. Any more on Kobe before we move on?
No, it's just once again sad that he's no longer with us. And like you said, his take on today's game would be very interesting, especially, you think how many of these players in his sort of final sort of months, he was interacting a lot on Twitter and giving challenges, and how many of those have actually come to fruition. So it'd just be interesting to see what take he'd have on even more of the younger players coming through.
Yeah. And one thing we were chatting about on Discord earlier, which I don't know how much of a sneakerhead you are or not, but Kobe Bryant had an underrated sneaker game, in my opinion, where there were a couple of shockers, particularly in the late Adidas years. But do you have a favourite Kobe shoe?
Sort of. I'm not a massive sneakerhead, but there's sort of an iconic Kobe shoe that's always in my mind. It's sort of, and I went back and found out what it is. It's sort of like around the Kobe 8, sort of that very low, sort of always in the purple and gold, sort of maybe probably 7, 8, 9, sort of that range. But yeah, just him sort of in those late years, in those low Nikes, always in the sort of either purple and gold colorways. I know sort of DeMar DeRozan's pulled many out since then, and PJ Tucker and stuff. So that would probably be my iconic Kobe shoe.
Yeah, and that's actually another interesting thing about Kobe, how innovative he was. Once he got to be working with Nike, he became very involved in how his shoes developed. And he was one of the first to really challenge the conventional wisdom of you need huge, chunky shoes to stop twisting your ankle. And he, having so much European exposure in his childhood, looked at soccer players and was like, these guys don't wear shoes like this and they're not twisting their ankle every 10 minutes. And it's, I think, pretty telling that so many players are so keen on wearing his shoes still, because even though they're quite old now, they still are some of the best performing shoes. And just a follow-up question, it was cool that you brought up DeMar DeRozan, not only because he wears Kobe's a lot, but he has just aesthetically one of the most similar games, I think, in today's game to Kobe's. Is there anyone else that reminds you in any way of Kobe today?
Well, this last week, Joel Embiid was trying to claim that he's got a bit of Kobe with him with the sort of fadeaways and stuff. See,
he was trying to claim to be everyone, though. So
the obvious answer, it's a bit cliche because I know he's trying to stay away from these comparisons, is Devin Booker. And I know he's trying to make his own career for himself, but you can see why people see that in him, and that's the offensive game he's got. I'm trying to think of guards now. I think actually there's a lot of very good offensive players in the NBA right now who actually, if you look closely, have got a lot of moves that they've probably taken from Kobe, and sort of a lot of the dribble pull-up stuff they've probably taken from him, and maybe they haven't got the other aspects of the game, so you get that clear replica, but I think Booker, Tatum, I think even Bradley Beal's got a little bit of that with some of his sort of offensive game as well. So there's quite a few that sort of Knicks bits, but maybe aren't a full copy.
Yeah, Jason Tatum's a good one as well, I think. Okay, let's move on from Kobe. Being a Raptors fan, as you are, I can't let the opportunity pass to talk about the Raps. So my first question is a very broad one. The last time we talked, it was quite a decimated roster health-wise, but everyone's back. Do you like what you're seeing?
I am. It's been an up and down season. I think we are the most 500 team you're ever going to see. I was just checking this morning. Our net rating for the season at the moment is plus 0.9, so might as well be nothing, which puts us 15th in the league, so dead middle. I think we've got some good young players. I think Masai's just got to get this roster right, which is tricky because there's a lot of players we like. But I think the problem we've got now is, especially when we're playing our really switchable lineups of, Barnes and Anunoby and Siakam, is then our main next three people coming off the bench are Boucher, Precious, and Ken Birch. And when your next three people coming off the bench are centres, not great in the modern game. But we're battling through. We're pulling out some good results. I think we'll probably be a playing team, but I think Masai's got to do a little bit of tweaking in this next sort of year to 18 months.
And you brought up the kind of long-rangey, switchable forwards, which has long been something people kind of hypothesize is what should happen on NBA teams and is what everyone wants. How well do you think that's worked?
It's a weird one. Some games it works really, really well, and I like it. I can see how it's going to work going forward. There's other games where I do wish we had a bigger presence inside. One for rebounding, don't get me wrong, all these three guys really good rebounders, but if you get someone like an Embiid in there, a Giannis who is really huge, they do look small, and also a bigger guy would set better screens for Freddie, would help him get open a lot more. He's having a great season, but he's having to work very hard to get the production he's getting. So I think I like it. I'd like to see it tried more going forward if everyone can keep healthy, see what happens for the rest of the season. But I think there might be a pivot point coming where maybe we have to look at, maybe it's consolidating 3 of the guys on the bench to one particular centre that we switch in and out, which, Nick has done in the past, when sometimes he'd play Ibaka, then Valanciunas, then he'd play neither of them. Sometimes he was willing to switch it around, and I think that's possible way to go forward. But with one particular big coming off the bench who can, Jokic, Embiid, Gobert, those sort of bigger centres.
This is a little bit of a divergent from the topic, but I'm just curious on what you think. With that, you mentioned both Jokic and Embiid, 2 of the favourites in the MVP race this year. And the reality is that the closer you get to winning a championship, you could almost put Giannis in that category as well, despite him being a very dynamic player, but unstoppable inside still. Do you think it's coming back that you actually need size in your front court to counter these types of players?
I think so. I see when they sort of always talk about 5 years ago about the big man was dead. I always disagreed with it. I thought the centre position was never actually an issue. I think what's actually died away is the power forward position. I think you don't get guys like Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Tim Duncan, your more traditional power forwards anymore. So actually, I still think you've always needed a big centre, and I think you always will need a big centre in the NBA. I think it's the power forward positions that's going to weigh, and so therefore I do think the Raptors going forward are going to have to try and find some form of centre. It doesn't have to be a star, it just needs to be someone that's going to sort of slow these guys down, make it tough for them. Look at teams like the Grizzlies, who've got Steven Adams, not the best centre in the world, but does the job, slows guys down. There's a reason why the Lakers brought back DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard, because they know in certain matchups they're going to need a big body to slow guys down. So I do think there's a place for a big man still in the NBA.
And the Raps are sitting 8th in the East, 5-5 in their last 10, very 500-ish, as you mentioned. How optimistic or pessimistic about the future are you? Where do you sit in that dynamic?
This season, I think will be definitely playing. I think whether that's 7 or whether that's 10 is still yet to be seen. I think that'll do a lot with injuries and also how other teams sort of react and make trades going forward. Going through into next seasons, I think as long as we can remain healthy, which has been the problem the last couple of years, I think we've got a good core there, and a core that's locked up. We've paid Fred, we've played Anunoby, we've paid Siakam, we've got Scotty Barnes on his rookie contract, which will last for multiple years. So I think we've got a good core moving forward. I think it'll just be surrounding them with the right pieces. So I'm very optimistic of what we can do.
And one of the things when I've watched Raptors games recently that is impossible not to notice is the use of Siakam as a ball handler and a facilitator, much more so than in the past. And looking at the numbers, his playmaking looks impressive, but his actual his own offensive efficiency is not that impressive in that role. So in pick and roll situations when he finishes a play, for example. How successful do you view this, let's call it an experiment, but this style of play that's been happening?
Think for the Raptors to be successful, if they want to run OG, Scotty and Pascal at the same time, it's something he's going to have to do. I think it's something he's always wanted to do. But the problem with Siakam is he'd get his head down, barrel to the basket, do one of his spin moves, and then want to pass it, but actually found himself trapped with 2 or 3 players because he had his head down, wasn't looking where he was going. I think now as he's getting older, a bit more maturity, you see now he's making those moves, and now he's starting to find a few of the guys. So I think the more he can sort of get used to it this season, I think going into next season, you could see him average 5 to 10 assists more regularly during the season and be a more primary ball handler and sort of take some of that weight off Fred, which is needed.
He does seem like the type of player who has a potential triple-double type season in him, given that opportunity. And the last time you were on, I was insistent on talking about Goran Dragic just because he looked like he may have been getting an opportunity at that point, and then it's disappeared again. We're going to talk about him a bit later from a different perspective, but at this point, all I want to know is, because he is appearing in trade rumors again, just from a Raptors perspective, who would you like the Raptors to get were you to trade him? Like, where do you already mentioned like the balance is a little bit off in your kind of 6th, 7th, 8th men off the bench. Is that what you'd look to change?
Yeah, I think, especially with Dragic being on such a hefty contract, I think what we could do is almost go for a 2-for-1 sort of deal where we get him out, bring 2 in who are maybe on 2-year contracts, smaller money, but are going to be good bench players, and preferably one who is a guard as well to sort of ease that rotation between Trent and Fred VanVleet and stuff. So for me, I think I'm disappointed he hasn't played. I'm sort of disappointed him and Nick Nurse couldn't some agreement earlier on the season. Apparently now he's away from the team with personal issues, which is fair enough. But I think when you look at our sort of shallow depth at guard, it's sad that he didn't play. But it's clear he's not going to play for us now with his sort of contract coming to an end. I think if we can get him out on a 2-for-1, get that bench depth back, I think it's going to be good going forward.
Okay, and let's look at the Lakers, who have been one of the most fascinating teams to watch this season. And up until this point, they've always had the excuse, or for most of the season, that Anthony Davis hasn't been there, who with LeBron James being 37 years old, in theory, Davis is really meant to be the A1 star at this point. He came back last night, wasn't the most breathtaking re-emergence of Anthony Davis, shall we say. How do you think he's going to impact this team? Are they back?
I think still wait and see, but I think it's not just the fact Anthony Davis was out there. I think it's interesting who Frank Vogel was playing with him, and the fact they had a starting lineup of Russ, LeBron, Davis, but then paired them with Bradley and Stanley Johnson. And it's clear that Frank's wanting to go back to this sort of defensive mindset, which AD is a massive part of. I think if you start seeing some performances now where the Lakers can hold teams to lesser numbers, I think you can say that the Lakers will be back and they can start making some moves forward. But it's difficult. AD gets injured so much. If he stays on the court and they can improve the defense, then the Lakers are back. If not, then I don't know where they go from here, because I don't think they can make many changes to the roster they've got.
Yeah, I think with assuming Davis nears 100% health before the end of the season, there's going to be plenty of games where, just on account of having Westbrook, LeBron and Davis on the floor, however badly it fits, they'll win games just on a cumulative talent margin. But it's impossible to ignore Westbrook, and I feel like I've talked about him on every single podcast this season almost, but all is not looking rosy with him. So Frank Vogel pulled him out of a game with 3:52 remaining, benching him for the end of LA's 111-104 loss to the Pacers, which was their 4th defeat in 5 games. Westbrook at that point had shot 5 for 17, attempted 0 free throws, and was a turnstile on defense, basically. So when asked about it by reporters, Vogel said he was playing the guys that I thought were going to win the game, which seems like a fairly clear message in terms of he didn't think Russell Westbrook was going to help contribute to winning the game. But also it's come out more recently in the last 24 hours or so that, again, this is from anonymous sources, so take from that what you will, but the Lakers have no plan B, as in they're not looking to trade Westbrook. So where do they go from here?
I think if we're trying to be optimistic and if we're trying to give Westbrook the benefit of the doubt, what we could say is that with Davis being out, he was trying to do too much and maybe got in his head a little bit. And hopefully with Davis being back, there'll be less shots for him. So therefore, be more selective about his shots. He won't be taking those silly mid-rangers that bounce off the backboard and nearly knock fans out in the 3rd row. So that's the positive way to look at it, that maybe things will improve now. And like I said, with the starting lineup playing, should be more space, and maybe he'll get a pick-and-roll game going with Davis. the flip side of that is things don't improve. I think, and if the Lakers aren't back and they do sort of stay around 500, maybe get a first round, against the Phoenix or Golden State and get bounced, I would be very surprised if Westbrook is suiting up for the Lakers come the start of next season.
With the absence of Anthony Davis, we actually saw LeBron playing a large number of minutes at the center position, which actually projected as the Lakers' most efficient offensive period of the season. It's not a good look, right? When Anthony Davis is now back, LeBron moves away from playing center where they look their best offensively. The best version of Westbrook we've seen in years is when Houston went extreme small ball. These pieces just don't fit together, do they?
No, they don't. I'm very surprised why actually the Lakers did this move. I think actually if you look at, they always got sort of slammed a bit for some of the moves they made in the offseason, and then sort of did 2 years in a row where they hired Frank Vogel, made some smart moves. I even think the team they put together last year, fair enough, it didn't go very far in the playoffs, was actually a decent team considering the cap implications they had. So I was surprised they made such a random move for Westbrook when you know what player he is at this point in his career. Yeah, they're just so puzzling. But the problem is they have LeBron, and LeBron can solve so many problems. And like you said, you just put him at center, and you got this amazing lineup. Maybe it still works. I think one thing that Lakers fans will be praying for, which they saw in their championship season but didn't see last season, is if AD can hit corner threes. Because if AD can start hitting his corner threes again, then maybe you can play these pseudo LeBron at center lineups with an AD at the 4, and then also you have that spacing again. And then defensively, you can be a lot better than a small ball lineup because you have AD out there.
And from coast to coast, let's move over to the Brooklyn Nets and a sensitive topic for Nets fans. James Harden rumors have emerged based on, again, these anonymous sources. They get everywhere. But it appears as though, whether it's true or not, someone is spreading the message that James Harden may be open to playing somewhere other than Brooklyn next season. How much stock are you putting in those rumors?
Not much, to be honest. I think it's going to be one of these scenarios where he's a bit grumpy now. He's in, Brooklyn. It's the middle of January. It's a bit cold. It's a bit wet. KD's injured. Kyrie's not around. He's a bit fed up. I think as soon as Kevin comes back, playoffs come around. Next thing you know, they start winning a few games. Round 1, round 2. I think you'll see Harden go, oh wait, life's not too bad here. I might actually win something, or I might stay here a bit long term. I think it's just a case of with the injuries they've got, time of year. It took a lot of flack at the start of the season for his health. I think he's probably just having a bit of a bad month, and actually these rumours aren't nothing. I won't be surprised if there's many star players around the league that making similar things, but it just doesn't get leaked.
One of the things I'm always struck by the Brooklyn Nets is how, over the past 2 seasons, how few games the combination of Harden, Irving, and Durant have actually played together. And in particular this season, obviously, when the second Kyrie's back to be able to play in some games, Durant is injured because he's been overplayed so much. And the second you look at their roster without 1 or 2 of their top level guys, it doesn't seem like the most talented roster all of a sudden. And so looking at them playing the Lakers or losing to the Lakers last night, it looks quite similar to a James Harden disappointing Houston Rockets team where he's having to do pretty much everything. And the thing I'm struck by is it feels to me very much like the sort of thing an agent leaks when he's aware his client is coming into the last season of his contract. 32-year-old client, could be his last chance for a big contract. And it's almost like just letting Brooklyn know he wants to sign a new big contract, because it's almost like a code for I want more money. Because when you get to that age, he's got the player option on next season for mid-40s million dollars, but he's at the age where he may actually forego that if the Nets will give him another 3 years high 30s or something. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm interpreting that. I'd be surprised if he was playing somewhere else next year. And now on to one of my most compelling teams in the NBA currently, which is weirdly the Los Angeles Clippers. It seemed a little bit doomed from the start with Kawhi out. Paul George went into kind of MVP type form at the start of the season. Then he went out, and this team just refuses to die. 5-5 in the last 10, so similar to your Raptors without any of their all-star level players. They've had 3 24-plus point comebacks just in January. Last night they had, I think it was a 35-point comeback. What are you making of this Clippers team? It's nuts, right?
I'm surprised how well they've stayed afloat. At the beginning of the season, NBA UK fans on Twitter were asking sort of outlandish predictions, and mine was that the Clippers would be a playing team because I could see this where Paul George gets injured and they would drop. I'm actually surprised how well they've actually kept afloat going forward. But I think for them this season, what they've got to focus on is not when PG comes back, but it's if Kawhi's coming back, because we had those rumours recently where he might be coming back. If that is the case, then I think you just keep going. These guys keep playing hard. They sort of do what they can. If it's looking like he's not coming back, I think they'd be better pivoting. See if they can get off some money, like they know they've got a backer coming up on $9 million that could save them a lot of tax stuff. Make some decisions on guys like Morris Senior, like his earpiece going forward. Can they use his money to maybe get some pieces for seasons to come? But if Kawhi's coming back, Paul George is coming back, then they're in a good position because they've got a team that clearly likes each other, clearly willing to battle, which you can't always say about Clippers teams in the past when you think about some of the implosions they've had in Clippers history.
And one of the players who I feel like it's impossible to avoid after last night's game, Luke Kennard. He scored, 7 points in the final 9 seconds of that game to seal the win over the Wizards. And he also has overtaken Klay Thompson for 13th all-time in three-point field goal percentage. So on his career, he's 41.84%. Is he the best shooter no one has ever had a conversation about?
I would have said probably no until you told me that stat, because the idea that he's shooting at a better clip than Klay Thompson is just mind-boggling to me. But I think the good thing about Kennard is he's one of these examples of we've got to sometimes let younger players in the NBA develop and not write them off, because I think there were some people writing him off early in his career. And actually he's one of these that maybe he's blossomed a bit later and he's found his position now. He's playing with confidence. And yeah, he's got to the point now where if he's out there in maybe not this season, but later season with Paul George, with Kawhi, you've got to mark him just like you've had to mark other lethal shooters like Redick and Corvard and stuff for past teams. And that's really going to open up space for Clippers, and he could play a vital role in a championship run for them either this season or going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting to me just like sometimes how these guys rack up stats like this, and as I say, no, you never hear anyone mention his name ever. And we are getting towards the trade deadline. I am going to list some players I feel like are just wasted and redundant on the current team they're on. And what I want you to do is tell me which teams you think should be looking to trade for them. So my first one is Robin Lopez, a veteran center, solid role player, even on a championship level team, wasted playing in Orlando, who have a lot of younger front court players they want to play minutes. So what team do you think should look at picking up Robin Lopez?
I think Robin Lopez is a great player out there. Nice contract, $5 million. I think the Bucks should actually go for him, get him back on the team. They need some backup, centre minutes with his brother being out. If that's not possible, then at least maybe he might be able to, lend his brother some back muscle so he can get out on the court. But I think someone like the Bucks should go for him. I had a look early on ESPN's trade machine. Someone like a DiVincenzo, Allen, or a Hill, George Hill, would make the money work. And to be honest, they're not pieces in the long run that the Bucks would miss. So I'd possibly say the Bucks could do with him.
We are in total agreement. I also chose the Bucks. If you can't have one Lopez, you have the other. Okay, Robert Covington. To me, I've really liked him on other teams, and I really don't like him currently. So, which team do you think should look at picking him up potentially?
So I thought look around. The money's interesting at 12. It's doable, but can get in a bit funny. I think the Bulls could do with him. They need a little bit more size of that 4 since they've lost Patrick Williams. Long term, you're not going to play DeMar at the 4. So I think going into the playoffs, him at the 4 would add a bit more size, sort of help protect Vooch a bit when players are trying to get into the middle. I think they'd have to send back maybe Derek Jones Jr. But as much as he's been good for the Bulls this year, he's not someone who I think playoff time is going to make a huge difference, where I think someone like Covington, a bit older, a bit more playoff experience, would make a bit more of a difference.
I like that. I went in a slightly different direction. I had 2 teams in mind, and what I haven't done is be as comprehensive as you in trying to make the trade actually work for any reason. But 2 teams, I think, just based on need on the court, should look at him definitely. The first one is Dallas, who I think his combination of shooting and defense, I think, are a perfect fit there, and give him a bit more front court versatility and competitiveness in that area of the court. And the other one is Los Angeles Lakers, who, as I mentioned earlier, the best version of Westbrook we've seen was in Houston, where they went super small ball, of which Covington was a key part of. And again, I don't know, I'm not sure how they make the finances work, but I think he could be an absolutely key player playing alongside their big players. So, yeah, I had those as just like teams who I thought should look to get him. What about Goran Dragic?
So he's another one, big contract, 90 million. This one I sort of saw on Twitter a few weeks back was where, with the Cavs losing Rubio, and they're on similar money, whether or not there's something where we take on Rubio for the rest of the season, maybe get some extra stuff sort of tapped on, and then they have Dragic who can go in with that second unit. Him and Kevin Love probably can strap a good relationship and sort of bolster what the Cavs are doing and making a good run in the East. It's known Dallas would like him. I'm not sure what pieces they'd have to get in, but of course they kind of want him to sort of as a running mate for Luka. After that, it's really difficult to find teams that would want him, because a lot of I think the top teams would want him, but then would be able to find the 19 million. As a Raptors fan, selfishly, I hope it is a trade where he leaves on, because if it ends up being a buyout and we don't get anything back for him, I think that would be really annoying.
Would you like Evan Fournier?
No.
This is what I think he would be a really good fit in New York, who I think they need a different look at the point guard position. Kemba and D Rose offer you something similar. Thibodeau needs a reason to change what the Knicks offense looks like currently, and I think bringing in a veteran playmaker would do that. And also, I feel like, and again, this is me being biased because I'm a Knicks fan and not thinking about whether the Raptors actually want Fournier or not. But if the Knicks were able to offload Fournier, Quentin Grimes has looked really, really good in the minutes he's played, but he's stuck behind playing behind Fournier. Cam Reddish has just joined, who you'd like to think is going to pick up some of those minutes too. So Fournier seems like he's expendable for the Knicks.
And they're on quick look. How would Kemba plus Nerlens Noel? Do you think that's too much going out? I feel like GMs now.
Not really. Noel has been. He's so injury prone that when he plays, you kind of really like him because he is an absolute elite rim protector and rim runner. But he misses so many games that when we've also got Mitchell Robertson, the evergreen Taj Gibson, Randall obviously plays like 40 something minutes in the front court. maybe we'd have to take one of your bigs just to make our roster work. So I'm not sure which is on the smallest contract out of yours, but yeah, I think something along those lines definitely works.
Yeah,
it's a deal. We've done it. Next was Eric Gordon, who I think is a really interesting player, both in terms of his ability to shoot the ball. He's played surprisingly good defense this year on a team that doesn't deserve him to do so. Where should Eric Gordon land?
The place I was trying to get him, but I was struggling to, like I said, because I was looking at the money, because he is on 80 million. I was trying to get him to fill it. I think I thought Danny Green was on slightly more money, and I thought it would work well. Because I think, yes, Seth Curry's played well this year. Danny Green is who he is at this point in his career. I just think Eric Gordon coming in there would be a bit more injection of pace. Someone around, Embiid who can shoot the three, defend well at a smaller guard position, I think would be a good pickup for Philadelphia. It would just be making the money work, because I have to find $8 million somewhere.
I like that. I hadn't thought about the Sixers, but no, I do like that a lot. I have tried to solve two problems in one with Eric Gordon, because he's another player who I think would fit incredibly well with the Lakers. But how I'm thinking about this is packaging him with John Wall for Russell Westbrook, because the Rockets have already come out saying they're open to getting Westbrook back for some reason, with John Wall not playing currently. The Lakers almost get to cut their losses on Westbrook. Wall gets to slowly come back off the bench, running the team while LeBron sits, and they get a player ready to be what they kind of want Horton Tucker to be already, who's not quite ready to be that player yet. Same with Avery Bradley, who's a bit inconsistent, I think. That's kind of how I was thinking about
really
that one.
Like that. I think people underestimated how well Wall played last year, and if someone could dump a contract like Westbrook and get Wall back, I don't think that's going to be a bad thing for the Lakers.
They're almost two of the... Russell Westbrook is so immovable currently that John Wall is one of the only players who makes any sense at all, because they're on very similar money, and neither of them is thought to be worth their contract currently. So exactly. And finally, I have Thaddeus Young.
For Thaddeus Young, I think this is one that's been rumoured already, but I think it would work well if he went to the Suns, and I think on 14 million-ish they could make Saric and someone sort of for the Suns to get a piece that I think would help them at the 4 position into the playoffs a bit more, next to sort of Ayton, give them sort of defence. I know they've got Jay Crowder, but I think it just gives them more options, and even a small ball 5 option, which would be nice for them.
I've gone in a slightly different direction, and I want to see him land in Toronto for similar reasons to what you talked about earlier, in that the kind of bench rotation doesn't work very well, and he's a lot more adaptable than a lot of those bigs coming off the bench. So again, I haven't looked at the money to make it happen, but the logic there works in my head at least.
No, I think that'd be good. I think at that point, I think we should just play like all of those switchable 3-4 guys all at the same time and just see what happens.
And one thing I'm curious about is 2 players who have previously been kind of ever present in the NBA, who found themselves out of the league, have, thanks largely to COVID protocols, found themselves giving decent contributions to their teams, which are Lance Stevenson and Bismack Biyombo. Which of those 2 do you consider the greater comeback?
As a Raptors fan, I have a soft spot for Busy because what he did with the thing, but the answer has to be Lance Stevenson. Break out the guitars, everyone. It was great to see him in that next game. And let's be honest, he's the sort of player where he shouldn't be out of the league. I think he's the sort of guy that in the 90s would have been the back-end guy on a sort of young team, whereas you see doing teams like OKC now, nope, if you're over the age of 27, that's it, you're gone, and we're just going to fill the bench with young guys. So it was so nice to see guys like him, Busy, Joe Johnson got a run for a little bit, Mario Chalmers got a run, and it was just kind of a bit nostalgic for a lot of fans to often see these guys back where that meant so much to people.
And so I was very conflicted here because the highlight reel and the emotional response wanted me to say Lance Stevenson. And then I looked at the numbers and was, I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was shocked because this is essentially the Chris Paul effect. But Biyombo in his 9 games with the Suns, 10.8 points, 7.6 rebounds, 1.3 assists, which if he were to carry those numbers would all be career highs, despite having been out of the NBA, along with over a block a game as well. So just his sheer production in like just over 20 minutes a game, thanks to Chris Paul largely. I'm giving it to Biyombo. Okay, next thing I want to look at, as we're not far away from the All-Star game, and that's the point where I feel safe at talking way too early about MVP odds and other types of awards. So what I did was I looked at oddschecker.com, which is like a betting site aggregator. And so it brings together all the data from a lot of different betting houses. And the current top 10 for MVP favorites is Giannis is the top, which I don't know why it surprised me, but it surprised me. Joel Embiid second, Curry at 3, Jokic at 4, Ja Morant, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Luka Doncic. Is there anything you would change in that list?
For me personally, I still think Jokic, I know he won it last year, but I still think this season he's been undervalued of what he's doing. I get that, people could always compare him to Embiid, they're both centres, and Embiid has put up some amazing numbers, but I think Jokic is doing less with more. He's averaging 26 points a game, 14 rebounds, 7 assists. There's no Murray, there's no, Porter Jr., and yet that team is still, in a good seed in the West, in a very competitive West. And I think if you actually swapped him and Embiid around, I think you'd see a very, very good Sixers team. And I don't think Embiid could carry that Denver group as far as Jokic is. So for me, I think Jokic should be closer to 1 and 2 instead of sort of more around 5.
Yeah, I agree with those points. The only other things I'd say, it looks like Kevin Durant will probably miss too many games to win MVP. So the fact he's that high still surprises me a bit. And yeah, I was going to say Jokic has definitely leapfrogged Curry for me as well. Curry's dropped off a bit recently from his ridiculous.
The only thing I noticed is it's weird that I know it's such a tight race there at the top of the East, but the fact that Miami are now top, and yet what if you was to do an MVP list keep going, would you get to the 20s before you got a Miami player? Would you get into the 30s? And it's such weird because that team is number 1 in the East currently.
Hashtag heat culture. And on to my favourite part of the show. Hit me with it, Kirk.
Nothing but Knicks silly nonsense.
So I'm actually going to provide more context than I wrote down here. So earlier this week, I heard someone refer to Trae Young as Waluigi, and now I can't unsee it. And this was only like the smallest. This wasn't even the best thing in the video I was watching. It was a TikTok of Quentin Grimes reacting to a fan reacting to him, which is so Generation Z. I couldn't deal with it. I wanted to record a reaction video of him reacting to a reaction of a reaction. So, but my question to you is, do you think anyone else from the world of basketball closely resembles a video game
So I've got
character?
a few. Some of them are more stretched than others, but let's see we go. I think if we keep in the Mario universe, I think Mario will be Cambiasso from the Denver Nuggets. I think I look for someone that was small, probably European. We sort of that. I know Cambiasso, I think, is Argentinian, but I don't know. I just sort of him as the sort of an NBA equivalent to a Mario. For some reason, I think Rondo looks like Cooper. The Turtles. I don't know why. He just does a little bit to me. So that's sort of the Mario universe. Another one, if anyone's a fan of God of War, Kratos, I think, is old school Jonas Valanciunas when he used to have the bald head and the big beard.
Nice, yeah. I was actually trying to think of someone for him, and I didn't get there, but you did.
And the final one I've got, which is a bit of a stretch, I think that Pac-Man is Zion Williamson because he's always eating.
Oh, excellent. I actually had a different Mario than you. I had Stan Van Gundy, who looks... Oh, yeah. He is Mario, essentially. There's no getting around it. I hoped to be able to fill out the entire lineup of Street Fighter 2. I failed, but I did make a good start. As Ryu, I had Jeremy Lin. As Ken, I had a young Larry Bird. Balrog / M. Bison, depending what version of the game you're playing. The boxer is Charles Oakley. Sagat is Nikola Jokic. I then realised I couldn't fill out many of the other characters with anything legitimate, so I changed game. I went to Sephiroth, the boss in Final Fantasy VII, for which I have Kelly Olynyk. Long flowing hair works well there. And then from the Bioshock universe, the Big Daddy, which is like a giant creature with a drill in its hand, I have Lou Dort, who I think would be a perfect fit there. If you listeners have any idea of anyone from the world of basketball who reminds you of a video game character, let us know.
A challenge to them would be, I was trying to think of someone for the Minecraft character, the main guy in Minecraft who's called Steve, who's just a more sort of average NBA guy that looks like a Steve.
Probably Luke Kennard by our earlier conversation. Discord listener... let's before we get to the questions, chats we've had in Discord over the past week, some that stood out to me. If you are not already a member of our Discord community, please do join. It's a fun place to chat hoops. Discord was down today, which was shocking, but it's back. And Fantasy League update. We have a Fantasy League channel. We run a fantasy team. The undefeated Ben Bean has no longer undefeated. You lost a game. What happened?
COVID and me forgetting to update my team caught up with me. I forgot. I missed Monday, which was I don't know. COVID caught up with me, and so my biggest crutch this season is the fact I've kept Kawhi Leonard in sort of injury just in case he came out, which meant I haven't been able to swap as many players out, and I don't know. But I finished. I'm now 13-1. I think I'm not the other person. I think someone else is also 13-1. So it should be a good battle to the end of the season.
Yeah. So you still sit atop the table, but you're equal with KD's burner team, Tyler, also 13-1. Southampton top shot 12-2. Looney Tunes 9-5. Go Bear or go home 9-5. Too good to be Drew 8-6. Run by some Nick Whitfield guy running up that table. And I'm going to stop there just so we don't list Richard Hunt's team, Nottingham Gam, just because I know that will anger him. AKA the human trade machine. But he did have other Discord chats away from the Fantasy League. So we had a lot of BBL chat this week. There's rumours of new franchises. We were debating which cities they should be in and how the BBL can most effectively grow those teams and grow as a competition moving forwards. We debated our favourite Kobe shoe, which is why I asked you that earlier. And then we got a question from aforementioned Rich. His second question was kind of about our favourite Kobe memories, which we've already covered. But his first question, most of you may know, I hate bringing up potential trades, tee-hee in brackets. But a lot of Wizards fans over the past few days have been more open to the concept of trading Bradley Beal. If he was available, which teams do you think he could go to? And what team do you want to see him play for?
I think the obvious one that's been battered around in the last sort of 2 years, never mind just this last few, is of course Boston. I think Boston have got some contracts would make it work. They've got Hal Horford's big contract. They've got Marcus Smart, and they could chuck some picks in there. I'm just not sure if there's enough value on the Boston side in terms of those picks for it to be worth for Washington. Do Washington take Westbrook back and trade Beal to LA? I don't. The problem with Beal is it's a lot of money on a contract which hasn't got many years left. So it's going to be a team that's desperate or trying to get off big money itself.
So the difficult thing with Beal as well is he has played for a bad team for part of his career. So for him, he'll want to play for a team that is actually good. And for my money, I would like to see something involving Andrew Wiggins going to Washington and him ending up in Golden State and the universe exploding at the prospect of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson and Bradley Beal playing together, just because I, for one, would like to see
it would be nice. For a split second, I almost sent him to Sacramento for like Rashawn Holmes and Buddy Hield, so that would be mean.
I'm trying to think if Washington would want that. Maybe. I think Holmes is always underrated. I think I actually like him. Okay, I'm just trying to think of any other destination where is remotely realistic for Bradley Beal, someone they can actually shift. The
only other one, because they're in free fall, is whether Atlanta decide to go all in. They don't look like they need Capella as much because they've now got Kongwu. So whether you do Capella or one or two of the younger pieces they've got left, maybe even Gallinari, and sort of try and slot him in alongside Trae Young. But I think that's a bit of a reach.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it there. Okay, games of the week to watch. This week I picked Grizzlies at Philly Monday night. Two of the players I feel like if I see a game live and they're playing in it, I need to watch it. Embiid and Ja Morant going up against each other Monday night, midnight. I'll be watching it. Have you picked a game out this week?
Tomorrow night it is Denver versus the Nets. Just because I'm very interested this season. I think after the playoffs last year, the Nets, when they're constructing the team, overreacted to Giannis, and that's why they've got Millsap and Joe Johnson and Aldridge and Griffin. So I'm just very interested to see all season how they defend really talented big guys like Jokic, like Embiid. So for me, Denver versus the Nets will be the one I'd be looking at tomorrow night at 1:00. Don't quote me on.
And for the early tip-offs, I'm actually just checking to make sure I got this right. I did not get this right. I was right to fact check myself. So I was about to say one's on Saturday, one's on Sunday. They're both on Sunday, the early tip-off games. So we have two games tipping off at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Lakers at Hawks and Clippers at the Hornets. What are you going to be watching for in those games?
To be honest, as a guy who loves LeBron, I'm having slight sort of flashbacks because it was a Sunday early tip-off when LeBron rolled his ankle last season against the Hawks, Solomon Hill rolling into him. So one, LeBron staying healthy, but I think it'll just be see how is AD playing, especially against a Hawks team which is, stuttering a bit. Can he get a bit of confidence going? Can the Lakers start, putting a small win streak together? They've just, got one. Can they get another one and sort of get some momentum going? So for me, it'll be, can the Lakers start building some momentum?
I'll be looking at the Hawks bench to see if there's any posters saying we miss Cam Reddish. We shouldn't have given him away for nothing to the Knicks. Thank you very much. But no, I think you're right there. It's AD is really the story for the next few games for the Lakers games for me. What about Clippers Hornets?
So yeah, similar sort of how is Charlotte playing? It's always fun to watch LaMelo Ball, win Bridges. They're sort of in the middle of the East. Are they moving up? Are they moving down? And like you said, we had to conversation about the Clippers earlier. It's just, they keep ticking it over. Can they keep sort of afloat so that if the guys do come back, can they press forward? On the Clippers, you've always got guys that are going to go off. Luke Kennard could go for some more points. Terrence Mann occasionally has a big game. Eric Bledsoe's been solid, and like I've already mentioned with the Hornets, LaMelo Ball's always fun to watch.
I am going to be looking for something very specific in this game, and it's Miles Bridges, because he absolutely decimated the Knicks a week or so ago, and LaMelo Ball didn't play. Thank you, New York Nightlife, for that one. And he looked like a different player, essentially, from who I've seen Miles Bridges be previously. So what I'm curious in that game is I'm going to look at him more closely playing alongside Ball. And I'm just curious because that game completely challenged my conception of who he is as a player. So I just feel like I'm going to watch him more closely in games from now on. And on that Miles Bridges bombshell, we are going to close the show. Thank you for everyone dropping in tonight. If you're listening after the fact, thank you too. Thank you, Ben, for joining. Where can people find you on the Tinterweb?
Thank you for me. They can find me at BenBean5 on both Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you, Kirk, as well, as always, for running the show. Do follow us on all the social medias, join our Discord. Don't forget you can subscribe for free on Twitch if you have Amazon Prime. It helps us out, costs you nothing. And with that, we shall bid you good night. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together.